everyone. Welcome to a very special episode of Game Face. We are here today to have our 2020 SFL Fantasy Draft, our 5th annual. We've been doing this for 5 years now.
How will I beat him this time?
Yeah. I will say this. I have not seen other publications doing it as much this year as they did last year.
Well, we haven't done it yet, so they don't remember.
Maybe. That might be it, actually. That could be it. But anyway, just so you guys know how this works, Matt and I take turns picking games. I have the first pick this year because Matt had it last year. We just take turns. And we take turns picking games until we both have 10 games. And we're not changing the rules this year either. Some of the drafts that have been going on SIFTD have been insane. Special rules where it depends on where you pick a game and all this other stuff. We're keeping it simple. We're doing it just like last year. We're going to have 2 teams of 10. And we're going to have 2 alternates in case 2 of those games on our list get delayed out of the year. I am very well versed in that. Last year I had 3 games out of my 10 that were delayed out of 2019. So we're doing our draft today, but we're going to kick things off with a couple general topics because a couple things happened this week that we do want to discuss with you guys before it becomes yesterday's news. The first of which is that PlayStation has already announced that it will not be at E3 2020, the year that it is launching the PlayStation 5. Matt, is E3 over?
It seems like it's on the downhill.
I mean, if you can't get Sony,
and if Sony proves you don't need it,
right?
What's the point?
What's the point?
I mean, I feel like we're very much on the path to E3 just becoming kind of a more corporate-focused version of PAX.
Yeah, it sure seems like it's on the road to just becoming another consumer event.
Yep. I mean, we've been kind of feeling that for the last couple of years.
Yeah.
But Sony's skipping 2 years in a row, especially the year they're launching a new console, is
I never dreamed this would happen.
Statement. I mean, I suspected it. I didn't know if they'd have the balls, frankly, to really abandon that. But it's like someone said on Twitter.
They're never coming back now.
Yeah, no.
Why would you ever come back?
If you don't need to come back this year,
you're never coming back. Sony is never going to be at E3 again.
That's the end of that.
It's insane.
As someone said on Twitter, I think by 2022, E3 is just going to be Devolver going wild, in the West Hall.
It might be.
Yeah.
The other thing too is when things turn into fan events or community events, the access suffers. Mm-hmm. You don't get those big game debuts anymore. You don't get hardware debuts. Yeah. You're basically checking out what is already a known quantity.
And I think you're really sort of hitting the thing. You're finally hitting the point where, because early on, letting the public in felt like kind of a Band-Aid of, we need money, we need to up attendance, we need to, and that worked in the short term, but in the long term, it just makes it feel less special.
Yeah.
And one of the big draws of E3 coverage, I think, for a long time was no one can get in here unless you're part of the industry, and so showing you this peak of what this thing is was sort of the real draw of coverage. And now anyone with a cell phone and a ridiculous amount of disposable income, because it's not cheap to get there and stay there and be here in LA. It's all just the same, and it doesn't help that because of the exposure to the public, they're pretty much just starting to double up the same displays they take to things like Gamescom or PAX.
Yeah, they're not even creating unique booths anymore. There's no E3 experience anymore. The publishers just don't seem to place the same emphasis on it that they used to.
Yeah, the only special thing about E3 now is that seeing the people I know and going to the parties where that we only get
networking and reconnecting and
seeing everyone and hanging out. I mean, the real E3 for me is in the hotels nearby, because that's where everybody is having their biz dev meetings.
Yep.
And it's a lot of people I know that are have gone for decades don't even go on the floor anymore.
Yeah.
So
yeah, and the floor was pretty much empty last year. It was also interesting when the ESA went through the data breach. And we got a lot of data from E3, and we found out that E3 is only letting in a couple thousand journalists for free every year, which is just complete garbage. It's insane to think that with this event, they feel like they can only let in a couple thousand journalists. And they're only doing it so that those people who are going to come anyway will then pay to get in. It's a total money grab. Yeah. So is this a smart idea, Matt, for PlayStation?
I mean,
I'm sure they'll have some gigantic blowout event or whatever.
I think they're right. I don't think they need it.
Okay.
I think people are going to pay attention to the PlayStation 5 no matter what. You don't need to be at this kind of increasingly arbitrarily timed event.
Do you think maybe
and it's gonna save them a
Xbox or
ton of money.
Nintendo fans, though, might not tune in to a separate event just for PlayStation, but if it was a part of E3, they might get exposed to some of that stuff?
No, I think the people that only stick to Nintendo maybe are a larger cohort than Xbox, but I feel like most people outside of sort of the hardcore Nintendo fanboys are pretty open to just, I want to play a good game.
Yeah.
And I think if Sony's got something good, they're at least gonna notice it. Maybe they won't buy a PlayStation for it, but they'll know it's there. They'll know it exists. They'll play it on their friends' PlayStation. They'll get around to it. And also, like, if the trend continues here, like, more Sony stuff seems to be going to PC eventually. So that's not a bad trend.
Yeah.
In terms of getting your games out there, it's just like. It's kind of a grand experiment, I guess, on the part of Sony, but it does sort of make sense in the way that it costs a lot of money to go to E3 for a corporate, especially if you're a big like Sony and you've got that huge booth space and stuff.
Well, they're also charging like quadruple per square foot of every other gaming convention.
Yeah, and there's been a lot of chatter of like how like this is they're skipping it not just because they don't think they necessarily need it because they're big enough to draw eyeballs no matter when they reveal the PlayStation 5. But because they're still having arguments with the ESA over how much it costs to go to this thing, and they feel that they can spend that money better by using it for direct promotion under their control for PlayStation 5. And like, it's hard for me to disagree with that at this point.
First of all, what has led to the demise of E3? Is it just technology and how cheap it's become?
I think it's some of that.
To cover it, and how easy it is to just sit at home and watch live streams.
I think it's part of that. I think it's just like the fact that you don't have to get everyone in one place to talk directly to the public anymore.
Yeah.
Like that's the thing. It's like the thing about E3 and why it was special back in the day was that like it was the only time during the year that the whole industry came to one spot, one place. All the news filtered out through that one convention center. Like everything that was happening in the industry happened right there. It was the time you had all the eyeballs, you had the mainstream press, but that's just not the case anymore. Like you can, Nintendo or whoever can put up their direct and get millions of eyeballs on it right there.
And truth be told, it's better, really, because every outlet can download that direct, have the B-roll right away. If you think back to E3 even 10 years ago, like you would go and you'd have to collect B-roll.
Yeah.
You'd have to go and meet with a PR person who would hand you a disc with trailers or gameplay on it, screenshots, stuff like that. All that stuff's gone now. Mm-hmm. A lot of the reasons for why you would do a live in-person convention that isn't consumer-focused is kind of moot at this point.
Like you don't need that. You don't need to get the press all out there to get their hands on things. You can just send them a code.
Yeah.
You don't need to hold a giant press conference and try to like not be drowned out by all the other noise because you can just do it like a month later and have no competition. Like I know we get like kind of wrapped up in like who won E3, but like if you're spending $100 million to be at E3, you don't want to risk losing E3.
Yeah.
So why don't you just like wait until late July or early August and say like, here, we're going to put up our thing and no one else is going to do a thing that can compete with that. There's no barrier holding you back from that anymore. And also like I think the mid to late 2000s and the real explosion of the industry and the becoming bigger than any other entertainment medium, bigger than movie, in terms of revenue, and the explosion of the Wii. I think the Wii is part of what killed E3 because all of a sudden this stuff was so big and so pervasive that mainstream media finally realized we have to pay attention to this the way we pay attention to movies and television and other entertainment. So you're never going to have a moment where you unleash PlayStation 5 or Xbox Series X or Switch 2 or whatever when CNN and all these other mainstream outlets aren't going to pay attention because it's the business is too big to ignore.
So here's my question though. Why does everybody else go?
I think some of it's inertia. Like I think
or just habit?
Habit and inertia, and also
it's an expensive habit.
And no one has done what Sony's done yet. No one's done the thing that says like, "Hey, you don't need this." Like,
well, I mean,
because you worry about if you do skip it and then no one cares after that, like you've damaged your brand, And maybe Sony's the only one that could do that. Arrogant Sony might be actually doing everyone a favor by being what would have once been called the first penguin.
Yeah.
All the penguins gather on the side of the ice, and one of them has to go in first. And if they don't get eaten by a leopard seal, it's safe to go in.
Do you think we're going to see more defections? Do you think before E3 this year, and even looking ahead to 2021, do you think?
I don't know about this year, but I think if if the PlayStation 5 launch goes off without a hitch and the sales are strong, and then like you said before, if they sell out their allotment, same as what you call it, same as Xbox, which by the way, like also isn't really there. I mean, they're across the street.
Right.
There was like an Xbox Live booth, I think, there 2 years ago, and then last year there was
Mixer
no
booth. There None.
It was just Nintendo and a bunch of stuff that would have been in Kensha Hall 15 years ago.
Yeah, I mean, there's still big third-party guys there.
Here and there. I mean, you got Sega and Ubisoft's still there. Got pretty much the same booth they've had forever.
But Activision wasn't on the floor this year. Gone. EA's been gone.
EA's been gone forever.
I mean, I was hoping all along that the momentum would change, and it was going to take something from the ESA to do this. But I was hoping all along that momentum would change, and this would be the point where things start turning the other way.
I mean, I think that was possible, but not the ESA
it failed.
Didn't do that.
It failed.
Yeah.
Do you think just lowering the cost of booth space is enough for the ESA, though?
I don't think so. I think the ESA needs to be more useful and less annoying to these companies. Like I've never really heard anyone who works at any of these big companies like say anything particularly kind about the ESA. It's just sort of a necessary evil.
Pactor likes the ESA.
Yeah, well...
Pactor
doesn't think the data leak mattered. And,
he doesn't.
I don't.
Well, again, because he likes the ESA.
He's not. It's also
he doesn't want to say anything bad about the ESA. His information actually did leak, but he just didn't care.
But doesn't he have like it was his home or was it his office?
I don't know.
But
I challenged him on that. I'm like, oh, you don't care because your stuff isn't out there, and he said that it was. So I don't know.
I mean, I'm sure he's not impossible to find if you want to find him.
But
it's just really stupid and sloppy, and like they should be better about that in this world where it's easy to become a target of harassment and a target of God knows what, especially in this industry.
Yeah,
it's bizarre that they didn't find that to be a priority, and if they can't get that together, why do you think they're going to be able to lobby for you properly in Congress?
Yeah, because I really don't think that just lowering the booth space price is going to move the needle.
No.
It's not going to change the momentum back to a positive direction. It has to be kind of a systematic change from top to bottom for E3 before I think these publishers who have decided it's not worth it would even consider whether it is now worth it. Mm-hmm. It's got to be more than just that financial incentive. I think the ESA needs to show the publishers that it has a direction for this show. Mm-hmm. And one that will be feasible. I mean, it's ironic that an industry that's driven by technology, its most important convention was killed by technology. Mm-hmm. It's so crazy.
Well, you live long enough to see yourself become the villain.
I guess so.
But I mean, it's just like, and also I think like Microsoft. Look, I think Microsoft would have been gone already if they didn't literally own a theater across the street. You know,
you're right.
Like,
you're right.
It's it's not worth it anymore for a lot of these, and there's been an increasing among the long-term veterans. I've definitely noticed an increasing malaise surrounding E3 going forward, and people spending a lot more time at the Devolver booth across the street than they maybe need to because it's like a different vibe there. And it's chill
fun
and fun, and
yeah,
it's just, and I don't see how you get it back. Like if Sony's launch goes well for the PS5, if they don't have any problem getting the word out and getting things off the shelves, I don't see what you could possibly say to Sony to convince them that E3 is worth anything to them anymore.
I mean, I would assume the ESA flew to meet with Sony, had a presentation, a deck to show Sony, to convince Sony to come back, to show it why it should come back. And, I mean, apparently that argument just wasn't compelling enough. Yeah. And if you've done that, if you've made your best pitch as the ESA and it still wasn't successful, you're in deep crap.
Yeah.
And
you gotta wonder what Nintendo's thinking looking at this, because Nintendo prefers to do their own thing.
I mean, it was the first one, really. It stopped doing the press conference first, remember?
Yeah.
It was the first one to stop doing live press conferences at E3, and everybody freaked out. And all it was a harbinger of what was to come. If anything, Nintendo, now in hindsight, really kind of took a baby step away.
Yeah, they kind of saw it coming a little more. I mean, part of it was just to mitigate the amount of money they were spending in the wake of the Wii U crashing and burning.
Yeah.
But they seemed to very quickly learn that it wasn't hurting them.
Yeah. And I think everyone else is figuring that out. So I don't know what's going to happen with E3, but it's not looking good right now. The show should be good this year. But I think in 2021, you will start to see a bigger exodus. Mm-hmm. So ESA's got to do something, but it might be too late at this point.
I don't know what they could do. Like, it's too. I mean, you can't shrink this thing back down and kick the public out again because you're gonna lose. They're gonna lose too much revenue to justify that to themselves. In an effort to make it feel more exclusive or more smaller. I mean, at some point, I imagine they'll only use one hall.
Yeah. It may be next year.
Yeah, I mean, you're getting to the point.
I mean, the way the momentum's going right now, I mean, there was a lot of empty space last year at the show. I mean, they probably could have squeezed it into one hall.
Yeah, but I mean, by the end of the week, I because I was with a camera crew for IGN, and like a couple times we were just like, why do we have to keep walking across the whole convention center to get to these things when it's just like
there's nothing in between?
Yeah, you could cram everything in one place and a little bit outside of it, that hall. Like if you like this, this right here, you could. That whole hallway all the way down to kind of the main entrance, like you could do that whole thing up with booths and like little displays and put the rest in that hall and you'd be fine.
ESA would never do that though. It's not right now because it would look like it's making the show smaller when publishers, I'm guessing, are asking for it to be bigger.
All I can say is last year I was uncomfortably reminded of E for All at times.
Yeah, I agree. Yep, especially now that the public's in there.
Yeah.
Yep, makes a difference.
I mean, to be fair, there's a lot more public in there than there ever was at E for All.
That's the funny
E
part.
E for All is one of the emptiest places I've ever been.
Monumental
I still
failure.
remember. I remember going. I went with a camera crew and I had Blair Herter, and they basically sent us like, go see what you can find. Like we had an appointment for one of those vests that punches you in the chest when you get shot.
Yeah.
And that was about it. And we're just like, all right, let's see what else we got. And Blair's like, I got an idea. Like, bring the camera crew over here, and like we're just gonna set up in the middle because the hall was set up weird. It was like all the booths were sort of in like a semicircle around.
Yeah, I stood like in the middle.
The big empty part in the middle. So we just all stood in the middle with our camera crew very visible, and like slowly PR people started to come out and say, like, "Do you want to do that?" Like we didn't have to do anything
because you were one of the only outlets there. I went there; it was so sad. All right, let's move on. We need to talk about Microsoft because there's been some big stories coming out about Microsoft as well. Some of it in response to some of the stuff that Sony has been talking about over the last month or so. So one of the things we actually didn't bring up when we were talking about PlayStation because of E3, obviously, is that PlayStation recently announced that there will be PlayStation 5 exclusive games at launch. And that was on the heels of Microsoft announcing that there will be no exclusive games for Xbox Series X at launch. How do you feel about that?
I mean, that's pretty much been their MO for a while now. Like everything at least also works on PC. So
does it matter?
I guess not. Like, I don't think I don't think Microsoft, I've said it a lot, but I don't think Microsoft cares about selling you hardware. I think they care about putting you in their ecosystem.
Yeah.
So that's just part of it.
Yep. It will attend E3.
Yeah, I saw Phil's tweets on that. It was very, very subtweety, sir. That was some.
But again, they responded.
That was some good shade.
Yeah, immediately after PlayStation announced it, they came out and said that they are going to be there. Now, when Xbox says no exclusive games at launch, that doesn't mean no new games at launch.
Right.
It's basically just saying that every game that comes out or in that time period will be playable on Series X and Xbox One X and Xbox One.
And PC.
And PC, yeah. So
it just won't look as good.
I mean, at this point, are there ever going to be exclusive games for Series X? Probably not.
I don't think so.
Yeah, I mean, it's just not a thing anymore.
It's apparently just not their brand anymore.
Yeah, it's not the way Microsoft is operating anymore. Now, there's been some confusion over PlayStation saying that it would have exclusive games at launch. Some people are reading that to mean that you won't be able to play PS5 games on the PlayStation 4.
Certainly. It sounds like those games, yes. Sounds like they are going to be designed for PS5 games.
Only. How do you feel about that?
I mean, I'm going to have a PS5, so I don't really care. But that's fine. I mean, you want to design something to specifically take advantage of the new hardware. Cool. I don't see why it couldn't scale.
Yeah, I think it's just a tactic. I mean, it's not that it's technically infeasible.
Yeah, I think it's just... That's a little more traditional console that they're going. And Microsoft is trying to do something a little more cell phony.
Yep, for sure. Xbox also announced this week that right now it has 15 studios creating, well, I don't know if I should say exclusive, but creating content for Microsoft. And it is hoping to have a new release from those 15 studios every 3 to 4 months, which is a big improvement over what we've got over.
I mean, that's what they need to do.
Yeah. Do you think, one, that that's feasible, and two, do you think it's good enough?
I think it is feasible considering all the studios they've picked up and sort of the stable they've built. Is it enough? It's a step.
Yeah.
Like, I think 3 to 4 months is, I mean, that you're kind of in old Nintendo territory there. It's like one thing a quarter is like better than nothing, but like you need to get to the point that Nintendo's at now where you're putting out something worthwhile every month.
Yeah. I don't think every quarter is good enough.
No.
And I mean, look, that's a huge improvement over Xbox One, where we got something maybe every 6 months, or in some cases like one big game a year. So it's an improvement, but yeah, I still feel like it's not.
They're not done by any means.
I mean, it sounds like they are done buying studios for now, though. It doesn't look like, from an interview that I read anyway, that Microsoft is interested in getting anyone else on board. They kind of have their stable now, and they want to get those teams up to speed, creating their games, so they can start plotting out the release schedule for the product as it finishes.
Yeah, the main thing I think is they need to take more risks and strike out in new directions on what they're making more often, because Microsoft definitely fell into a rut of just like, we make driving games and shooters and that's it. And like, you need to give me, say what you will about Nintendo one way or the other, but the other thing about each of those monthly releases is they're all very different from one another.
Yeah.
Like, you're not playing the same thing 2 months in a row when you're buying like the big Nintendo exclusive.
It's true.
Each time.
Yep.
And same, and PlayStation even. I mean, PlayStation does kind of have that sort of, they specialize in that sort of cinematic action game sort of thing. But God of War doesn't feel like Days Gone, doesn't feel like Spider-Man. Yeah. So like you feel like you're getting a unique experience, even if they are in a similar vein.
Yeah.
Whereas Microsoft is like, here's another fucking Gears game.
Now, Days Gone and The Last of Us, pretty close.
Somewhat. I think The Last of Us is a much better everything. For the most part.
Of course, yeah.
Like, I see where they're going with Days Gone, but it just like. And there's potential there, and a Days Gone 2 is probably going to be something pretty special.
Like, I wouldn't be surprised if we're playing The Last of Us Part 2, and you're out in the wilderness, and you see, like, a biker gang ride by. Mm-hmm. And
I mean,
it's like an Easter egg
if you made
Days
the
Gone.
zombies and Days Gone clickers, they could be in the same universe.
Right.
No problem.
Yeah. Yep. Another thing that Microsoft discussed this week, again, almost as a rebuff to Sony, all games will play up and down the consoles. So unlike Sony, where it's saying, like, no, this is a PlayStation 5 game, even though it'll run on your PS4, Microsoft's like, screw that. Like, if you have the old Xbox, it's going to run it. It's not going to run as fast. It's probably not going to look as good, but it'll run. Which do you think is the better strategy?
I mean, my guess would be the better. I mean, it kind of depends. I guess like the better strategy for a business would be to force your consumers to buy the new hardware. But I think the more consumer-friendly option is what Microsoft is doing, and just letting you play whatever you want to play on your hardware, and sort of leaving you that carrot on the stick of like, well, I'd like to get the better one so I could run it better and make it look better, which has worked for PC games for a very long time.
I have a question.
It's also interesting that they keep talking about playing older games, like, move up.
Well, Hip Hop Gamer, like a week and a half ago, said he had all this information about how you're going to be able to play every single PlayStation game ever on PlayStation 5. And then a few days later, this comes out, and people are now confused. But I have a question. Is it actually better for PlayStation to sell more consoles if, and this is an if they're losing money on the hardware? Or is it better to just put out the games? You're cool if people buy a PS5. You don't care that much if they don't. But it plays on the PlayStation 4 and the PlayStation 5, and then you sell so much more software.
Somewhat, but I think you also have to build that base so you can, make that money on the software moving forward, because if there's one thing Sony is committed to, it's continuing to spend bigger and bigger budgets on things that take advantage of the PS5 hardware, because that's where their bread and butter is on those cinematic adventure games. They expect to sell 50 million copies of God of War 2 because it's going to look obscene on the PS5.
Yeah.
So I don't know. I'm sure they've run their own numbers, and they think that this is the way to go. I don't know if I believe this stuff about all the backwards compatibility on this. I mean,
look,
like
is Hip Hop Gamer.
I do feel like you're going to be able to bring.
I love the guy, but he's not typically a source of inside.
I feel like you're going to be able to bring like a lot of your digital library, if not all of it, forward. But like in terms of like, I will believe that you can stick a PS3 disc in this thing and play it right off the bat when I see it, because I don't believe anything.
That would be the biggest shocker.
I don't believe anything emulates the cell processor properly enough to do that.
Yeah.
I mean, if anyone could do it, it could be Sony. But like, Sony could probably figure it out. But like, the other question becomes like, how in the world is that worth your time?
Yeah.
You know, like I might use that 3 times to play.
I hardly ever use backwards compatibility.
I mean, I use it a lot on Xbox
because all you have to do is just download your game.
All you have to do is play. Yeah.
Yeah.
So that's because that's different. And there's some stuff on the old Xbox that, like, you know, the most played things I think on backwards compatibility on my Xbox are the KOTORs and the Ninja Gaidens, because they're not on anything else except, you know, I have PC versions of the KOTORs, but like those never came forward.
Yeah.
You know, like having a lot of those old Star Wars games is great. Like Republic Commando and, like, you know, all that stuff is great. Like, you know, some of the other exclusives, Crimson Skies. That's
good. Oh yeah,
never
some
on
of that
anything
old
else.
school.
You put those Mech Assault games on there again. You work that license out. I'd play those. You know, it's like the best part of backwards compatibility for me is kind of saving those old exclusives that never came forward or were on anything else from the junk pile of history, essentially.
Yeah.
And there's a few games on PS3 that I think deserve that treatment too, but like a lot of that stuff has come forward. I mean, at one point I would have said Yakuza was in that category, but they've, you know, Sega's pulled all that stuff forward, and you play everything on PS4 now. It's great.
Yep.
So I don't know. Like, that's a cool feature, but I just don't know if that's, as much as I would like it to be a thing, I don't know if that's worth Sony's time, especially considering now they seem to have this focus on, like, we're not afraid to make things PS5 exclusive, and like, you know. So that seems to be really counter to the idea that they would focus really hard on making sure you can play all your old games on this thing.
It's interesting how the two companies have come to different conclusions on the same question.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I think a lot of it, you're right, does depend on kind of their corporate culture, what their goals are, things like that. The final nugget of Xbox news from this week is that rumors are swirling that there may be a Windows mode on Xbox Series X, where you can literally just flip a switch and suddenly it's like a PC with Windows and Steam and Epic Game Store and Humble Bundle. Like, all that stuff would open up. 1, do you believe the rumor? And 2, if you do, what do you think about it?
I don't really believe it, because I don't see what the advantage to Microsoft is there. Like, that's not
letting them out. Now you're letting them out of your ecosystem. Yeah. You're going against the grain of everything you've tried to accomplish.
It sounds like a
wishful thinking.
Like wishful thinking, like pipe dream. Yeah.
It would be awesome, though. How great would it be
if
you could just use Windows on your Series X? It would be the most powerful PC everybody has.
Yeah.
I mean, it would be awesome to be able to play some PC stuff in 4K on your Series X. But you're right. Like, Microsoft would have to exclude Steam, somehow exclude Epic Game Store, and then push Windows Storefront on you somehow.
Yeah. I just think it's just too good to be true.
Yeah.
Like I don't see where Microsoft benefits from that.
I don't either. Yeah, I don't see any way it benefits, because you
I'd
can also
love it. It'd be great.
Because then also you can start, you know, emulators with pirates.
Yeah.
I mean, it opens up the door to so much
it makes
stuff.
that thing an all-in-one box in a way almost nothing has ever been, which might actually be the answer,
right?
To why Microsoft, because like that would be, even if I wasn't interested in Xbox games, having a box that did that easily might be enough to get me to buy one.
Or if like
that seems like a really long shot, though.
Or if you even just do something like you seed a rumor of. I mean, maybe that's what's just happened.
Yeah.
Maybe Microsoft seeded this rumor somewhere.
Well, that seems to be happening more when you see the Assassin's Creed thing.
Yeah.
Where the leak about the Assassin's Creed Viking thing, and it turned out to be intentionally false.
Yeah, to see who was picking it up, and sneaky.
Yeah,
it's warfare out there.
Information warfare in the game industry. I dig it.
Yeah. So anyway, a big week for both Xbox Series X and PlayStation 5. Any of this change your opinion on either of the platforms?
No.
Yeah.
I mean, look, I'm in.
I'm buying them both. So.
Yeah. I mean, it's funny how Microsoft. I know there's like specific things I'm going to want, especially because of the studios they bought.
Yeah.
Like, look, I'm going to want to play whatever Obsidian.
Yeah.
Has or whatever.
Yeah.
Sony, we don't really know too much, but like, there's no possible way I'm not going to play what Sony's putting out from the first party perspective. Like, even beyond.
I mean, first party stuff for me makes me buy every platform.
Yep.
Period. And generally, 2 of the 3 platforms I rarely ever play. I'll play them just for the exclusive stuff on that platform, and then I'll have one platform where I play the exclusives and the third-party stuff.
The most powerful one.
Yeah, but it's worth it.
Oh, yeah.
It's worth the money that you spend for those other 2 platforms to play the exclusives. Instead of, I remember whenever I was young and poor and I just had one platform, and what you would end up doing is you'd end up buying games that aren't all that great because you want or need something to play. And so you end up wasting money on mediocre games, or you convince yourself in your head that the game is going to be better and that all the reviews are wrong. You start getting in this weird space where you're kind of doing mental gymnastics with yourself. When you have all three consoles, one, you're never, ever without something good to play. Like, very rarely. Like, right now, yeah. Like, the start of this year has been really...
not a lot happening right now.
Really slow. But typically, if you have all three consoles, you always have something great to play. So, again, I've said this for the 20 years I've been doing this. I always recommend that people, instead of buying, like, 4 or 5 mediocre or crappy games for that one platform that they have, they save that money and buy another platform.
Yeah.
That's my suggestion.
And never sell hardware.
Yeah, always keep it.
Never get rid of the consoles.
I've never sold hardware.
No.
Yeah.
You're always going to regret it.
Yep, absolutely. Because that's one thing that they can never take away from you. Like, if you have a disc and the console, it's always going to play.
Yeah.
And with your digital stuff, who knows?
Now, yeah, I mean, the digital stuff I'm not too worried about. For me, it's just like...
Depends on the vendor.
Yeah. Like,
I'm not worried about PlayStation or Xbox.
Is my disc copy of No Man's Sky of any use?
Not anymore.
Not really.
Nope.
Like, although it might be fun.
It's a key still.
One day it might be fun to go and like play that on like an offline PlayStation 4 and just play like the Zero version of No Man's Sky again.
It would be unrecognizable.
Yeah.
They've changed that game that much.
Oh, yeah.
Yep. All right. So there you go. Those are the only big stories from this week. I'm not sure what other podcasts are doing. I'm glad we have a draft this week.
I mean, those are pretty big stories.
Oh, yeah.
If you have like more people than we do, I bet you could just argue about that for an hour.
You probably could. Yeah. You know? Well, we just did it for about 32 minutes.
All right.
I think we did all right. All right, everyone. It's time for the SFL, the Sifted Fantasy League video game draft for 2020. A quick recap for those of you who maybe haven't watched. This is the 5th year we've been doing this. But just in case you haven't checked it out before, Matt and I take turns picking games until we have 2 teams of 10. Then we both pick 2 alternates, because what happens is if a game gets delayed out of the year, you would get a 0 for that score. But we have 2 alternates that you can slide in case the game is delayed out of the year. And then what we do at the end of the year is we add up the average review score for each game. And then the person with the highest overall number, the highest aggregate review score, wins the league. Matt won the league last year. I won it the year before. Then you won the first 2 years, I think, right?
Yep. And then you won the year with Marcus.
Right. Yeah. So he's crushed me. But overall, I'm like 2 and 3. Any other notes we should share before we get on with the picking?
I don't think so. I mean, this is an interesting, even more so than usual draft, because we know almost nothing about the second half of the year.
Yeah, because it's all...
there are no new system launch games in this. There are no, like, you know, I think the latest we go here is probably Ghost of Tsushima.
I picked a game that comes out in almost Q4.
I mean, yeah.
But there are no hard Q4 games in this draft.
No, there's probably a couple.
Yeah.
Maybe.
Oh, another thing we should let you know is that if you haven't figured it out by now, Matt and I have actually already picked our teams. Because you'll see once we start the draft, we have graphics that go along with the draft, and we need to know what the games are beforehand to get those graphics ready. So while we do the draft, we're not picking the games live, but we will explain kind of where we were in our headspace when we made these picks, other games we were considering, why we decided to settle on the one that we chose. So there's going to be a lot of context for each one of our picks in this draft, but they're not live, and I just want to get that out there. We're not trying to fool anybody or anything. So I guess that's it. I think we're ready to rock. One more note. So the Sifted Fantasy Challenge, which I talked about on the show last week, is launching next Tuesday. So by the time we get back here for the next episode of Game Face, it will be live, and I'll be pushing to it. There will be a link in the show description. You guys will find it. But I just want to let you know that everything is kicking off next Tuesday morning. The site will be up. We're doing some work on it to kind of gussy it up a little bit for the second season. But it'll be ready for next Tuesday. And next Tuesday morning, that's when the floodgates will open, and you got to go and make your picks. And again, there's going to be a real prize for the winner this year. So get excited for that. But now it's time for Matt and I to pick our teams. And we will be talking about this all year long. It's one of these things. We do the draft in January, and then it's something that we come back to the entire year long. So How we do the draft pick is the first year we did it, we flipped a coin, and then every year after that we've taken turns getting the first overall pick. So Matt, last year picked first. Your first pick was Anthem.
Good job.
Well, I get the first pick this year, and I'm hoping that, what did Anthem end up at, like a 58?
57 or 58, yeah.
I'm hoping it'll get above that.
Yeah, I mean, I really hope you don't get Anthemed on this one because I need this game to be good.
It would be a nightmare if it were, and I don't think there's any surprise on what the first overall pick is of the SFL 2020 draft, but it is Cyberpunk 2077. I could not pick anything else first overall. Generally, when you're doing fantasy sports, and that's not just video game fantasy or fantasy football, or it's any kind of fantasy sports, you should try to figure out what is most likely to happen because there's luck involved. And so you want to try to take out as much luck as you can and try to be as safe as possible, particularly with this, because if a game gets delayed out of the year, you get a 0 for that game. So I cannot think of a safer game at number 1 than Cyberpunk 2077. It stunned me every time I've checked it out. Could it be bad? Bad might be a stretch, but could it get like a 6 or a 7? Sure, it absolutely could. My concerns, and look, this wasn't just a slam dunk. I actually took a little bit to think about it and like look at some other options. It's CD Projekt Red. It's not exactly known for releasing polished games. Like generally, its games are pretty buggy and in some cases downright broken. So
certainly, the first 2 Witcher games they pretty much had to redo.
Yeah.
There were enhanced editions of each one that they gave out for free.
Because they were busted, basically broken. So look, there is some risk with this pick. But again, when I looked at all the other games, and you're going to see the first 4 rounds of this draft were pretty easy, and then it starts to kind of get hard. Once you get past those first 4 rounds, I think you'll start to see why Cyberpunk was kind of the pick. And I would guess that in all the drafts going on SIFTD, or if people are doing them other places, and I'm sure in the Fantasy Challenge, that this is probably going to be the most popular number 1 pick.
Well, so I was definitely sitting there thinking, like, well, he gets first pick. Oh, I know he's going to take Cyberpunk. Da, da, da. But then, like, after the more I thought about it, I'm like, you know what? I think my first pick is the first pick because I think this might outscore Cyberpunk by a point or 2.
Okay.
And that's Last of Us Part 2.
Yeah, I could see
now,
it.
Cyberpunk is my most wanted game of the year. I mean, Last of Us Part 2 is probably down closer to 4 or 5. But I think this might be the highest rated game of the year.
Yeah. I've never seen a Naughty Dog game get anything below like a 9. Have you?
Can't recall. No.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't know. Maybe like back in the Crash days.
I'd probably even then, I doubt.
Yeah, you're right. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I don't want to say that Naughty Dog gets a bump because, look, its games are amazing. They're incredibly polished. They're moving. They're intelligent. They're targeted at adults. And it's clear to see that.
I think also I just think it reviews well. You know, it's a fairly self-contained experience. The reviewer gets through it in a decent amount of time, where Cyberpunk can drag. You know, we just don't know what kind of bugs you're going to run into in Cyberpunk. It's like,
I think we know there are going to be bugs.
There's going to be some stuff in there. It's like I just, and they've never done a first-person game before. Like the more and more I thought about it, the less annoyed I got that you got Cyberpunk, and the more I'm like, it's not like having Cyberpunk on your team is going to be a bad thing by any stretch of the imagination. I don't think, but I just ended up feeling like this is a safer pick.
Johnny Hurricane brings up a good point in chat. He says that when you picked Anthem last year, all the vibes were positive on Anthem.
That's true.
All the previews were positive.
Yep.
And you just never know. You just really never freaking know.
Yep. It wasn't until we got that first demo where it was like, oh no.
Yeah. Look, I wouldn't be surprised at all if The Last of Us Part 2 outscored Cyberpunk. Do I think it's probably going to deserve it? Probably not.
Probably not, yeah.
But I could see where it would end up with a higher aggregate review score. You're going to have some...
I definitely picked a few things on my team with the bump in mind.
Okay.
Yeah,
trying
to outthink the reviewers more than think how good the game's going to be in and of itself.
Yeah. I mean, imagine the stones you will have to give The Last of Us Part 2...
Like an 8.
An 8.
Yeah. Hope you like death threats.
I mean, seriously.
Yeah.
I mean, it's really sad that that's something that you have to consider. But when we're doing this draft, that is something that you have to consider. That people will legitimately be scared to give this game a bad review score. and I don't think it affects people like us who have been doing it a long time. But if you look at Metacritic, like 95% of the sites that make up the Metacritic score are little dinky fan sites.
Yeah, and they're gonna love this shit, and
they will love it. Yeah. And they're either gonna acquiesce and say it's awesome, and maybe it is, or they're just gonna bomb it for clicks. That's typically how those sites operate.
I mean, I think it's gonna be more the former
than
the latter.
Definitely.
I mean, look, I will watch these cutscenes all day.
Yeah,
but like. My concern is like, I didn't think
when the rubber hits the road.
I think the first game was very fun to play.
Yeah, I agree. And, I didn't think it was that fun either.
I mean, I think what they've shown of this one looks way better.
Yeah,
but we'll see what happens.
Like way better.
Yeah.
Yeah. Like we'll combat looks like a major step up. So yeah, I totally get. I think either of these games can be picked.
Vincent makes a good point. In fantasy football, some QBs are better because you get flagged if you touch them.
That's true.
I think this is the.
Is this a Tom Brady?
This is the Tom Brady. This is the Tom Brady of the draft here.
Oh, I wish Sam were here.
Neil Druckmann is the Tom Brady
of the video game industry. There you go. All right.
Don't fuck with the Neil, people. He'll eat you alive.
Oh, okay. It might be fun actually if like people start to try to guess.
K Alpha.
Try to guess
KC Alpha. I guess it is.
Yeah, Casey Alpha. Thank you, man, for all those subs. You rocketh. Okay, it's time for my second pick. It might be fun if we start asking people to predict what they think we're going to pick.
Yeah.
Just see if they can guess it. Very quickly, guys. Put our name and then what you think our next pick's going to be in the chat. And it'll be interesting to see if you guys get it right. If we start that now, obviously for this pick it's not going to work. But for the rest of the draft, it could be pretty fun. So
they're guessing.
Okay, Final Fantasy VII RE3 are two of the guesses. 2 Final Fantasy VII guesses. 3. Let's go 4. Doom. Football Manager 2021. Nope. Final Fantasy VII seems to be the most popular pick. Do you think that that's what should be selected here?
No.
Yeah, I don't either. And it's not what I picked. This might surprise some people, actually. My second pick is Ghost of Tsushima. There's a multitude of reasons why I selected this set.
And it is funny to me that like your top 2 picks are my top 2 games.
The ones that you want to play the most?
Those are the ones I want to play the most. But they're also the ones that I don't really trust.
Really?
Like I just don't know what Ghost of... I mean, I'm super excited about Ghost of Tsushima. Would I be shocked if it ended up with like 8s? Not really. But we don't know enough about it yet.
I would be surprised if it ended up with like a mid to low 8. I would say that.
I mean, certainly this is the year I'm probably rooting the hardest for games on your team
to
be good. Because you're picking my favorite games.
Were you getting salty at all over my picks?
Really?
No,
because Ghost of Tsushima. I'm both of those games. I'm just a little concerned.
Yeah.
Maybe because I'm so excited about them that I'm like, maybe I don't have any objectivity. Maybe I'm not like missing the forest for the trees on them. But
I think it's safe. I mean, every game I've ever played by Sucker Punch, I have loved.
Yeah, I mean, they're both going to be better than Anthem. So it's not, Anthem really
skews, a low bar.
Anthem really skews the bar for failure.
It really does.
League, so.
Look, it's Sucker Punch. Sucker Punch has never even made a mediocre game. In fact, I would argue pretty much everything it's done, although it did kind of get in an infamous rut there for a little bit.
Yeah.
But I would argue every one of its IPs has been something unique and fun and creative. I also feel like if you look back like this past year, like I didn't think Sekiro would do as well as it did because it was kind of based on, historical stuff, which I think in the past probably would have been to a game's detriment, but I don't think it is anymore. I feel like now, especially that we have a lot of older people who are evaluating games like us, I think they appreciate stuff that does things a little more classy than your typical kind of run-and-gun action-adventure game. This, to me, is like one of the classiest games I've ever seen. It appears to be extremely historically accurate. There's no weird mystical stuff in the game.
I mean, it's definitely down to earth. There's a lot of armor and weaponry in this that did not exist at the time that they set this game. That did exist later, but we would recognize as kind of tradition, like classic samurai stuff.
So they fudged it a little bit.
They're fudging it a little. It's like setting something in the Dark Ages and putting all the knights in plate armor.
Oh, okay.
They didn't have that armor until much later, but we think of them as looking like King Arthur, looking like that. So that's sort of what you do.
Gotcha.
To kind of communicate that visual trope.
I just feel like games like this that aren't
fine.
fantasy based, that aren't sci-fi based, it feels to me like people are gravitating towards these games.
No, I'm super down with the fact that I'm never going to fight an ogre in this game.
Yeah, or someone's going to be casting some fireball spell at you, or none of that. It's all about swordplay. So I have faith in the developer. I have faith in the idea. I have faith in what I've seen of it so far, which makes it my second pick for the 2020 draft. You're up, Matt.
All right. My second pick is maybe a little off the rails here, but this is another bet that the review community is just going to love it, and it's Half-Life Alyx.
No, I regretted picking Ghost of Tsushima as soon as you picked this game, because this game is going to get 10s across the board.
Because it's Half-Life.
Well,
it's back. It's going to revolutionize how people think of VR.
It's not even just that, though, Matt. It's also the fact that this is the savior of VR. Mm-hmm. So all the fan sites we were talking about earlier, all those VR fan sites, their existence kind of depends upon this game. So I don't see anyone from those sites going into evaluating this game with any sort of negative intentions. Like, I think they're going to do their best to try to find the positives in the game. And truth be told, it looks like they're not going to have to look all that hard. The game looks freaking awesome. I am really excited for it. I don't know why I'm selling this game for you. But it does show you that it's a great pick.
I mean, I would have picked Ghost of Tsushima, but that was closer to my fourth pick. Probably.
Okay.
I was a little surprised you went for it that soon, but I don't know. You can't go wrong with a Sony exclusive.
No. It's the one thing that has been constant and consistent since we started doing this draft. Mm-hmm. Is if you have a PlayStation first-party game, it's going to score high. That's pretty much just the way it is. So, and that's a testament to Sony's, QA and its standards as far as its first-party software is concerned. But Half-Life Alyx is like an entire medium is kind of hinging on the game. Mm-hmm. And
you've got that plus the fact that Half-Life's coming back after all this time.
And that'll tick the boxes for the people who don't care about the VR angle all that much. That just care about the Half-Life angle of it. So, it will probably be the highest scored game of the year.
Might be. I don't see a downside to this one.
Because the other problem too is that the bar for VR games is pretty low. So if you're like us, and when you evaluate games, you're comparing it against other games on that same platform, it's going to destroy everything. Mm-hmm. It's like a real game, which are just that is hard to come by in VR. So I think that's a great pick. I was jealous of it, and I was like, why didn't I look at it that way when I looked at it on my list?
I was shocked you didn't pick that.
We should have changed it. We should have traded. Sounds like you wanted Ghost of Tsushima.
I don't want to trade it.
Oh, okay.
I think I get the better pick on this one.
Okay.
But
I think you do too, actually.
I was just surprised because you're a bigger believer in Half-Life Alyx than I am.
Yeah.
But I also know reviewers.
Yep.
So I think it's going to be fire. So.
As the kids say,
yes.
It's going to be litty. Anyway, it's time for my third pick, and this was me getting a little retribution from last year when I got burned. Mm-hmm. And my third pick in the 2020 draft is Animal Crossing New Horizons.
We know this is coming now.
It is definitely coming. It almost came last year when I drafted it the first time. Mm-hmm. I drafted it again. I was like, I went out on a limb for it last year. I'm not going to get burned and let somebody else get it this year. It's like I already got burned on it once. So I went back and I did look at old Metacritic scores for Animal Crossing. Most of them are 8.6 or higher. There have been a couple, though, that have gotten kind of... Well, one of them was like that Amiibo game.
Yeah.
Which doesn't count.
Yeah, I don't think that's a problem.
But the Wii game, I think its aggregate is at like 6 point something. So So there is a possibility that it could do poorly. I think that's highly unlikely.
I think Nintendo's in kind of a groove right now. I don't think they're going to drop the ball on this one. And it doesn't seem very interesting to me, but I've been done with Animal Crossing for 10-some years. So
yeah, and the last one, its score ended up being an 8.8. So it's good. For third pick, I'll take it.
So my pick, we're gonna do a little trade off there. I'm going for Doom Eternal.
Yeah, so that was another game that I chose last year.
The game that screwed you over last year may screw you over again this year.
It may, actually. So I have a question. Mm-hmm. When I picked Assassin's Creed, Animal Crossing Switch, did that ping you
No.
that, oh yeah, there's another game that Shane drafted last year that got delayed?
No, Doom was my third pick if you didn't change. Basically, my picks were going to be Last of Us, Half-Life, Doom, and Ghost of Tsushima. Those are my first four.
All right.
And I didn't have to adjust until the fourth because you already picked Tsushima.
So wait, Cyberpunk wasn't even in your top 4?
Well, I knew I wasn't going to get it.
Oh,
I knew you were going to pick it
Gotcha. Okay.
I didn't even bother putting it on the list.
Yeah.
It was just
it's gone. Yeah.
You'd have to be, I think there's a chance that Last of Us 2 ends up being the better just by a 0.1.2 percentage point. But you'd have to be nuts not to pick Cyberpunk.
Yeah, it was hard not to. Watching it delayed. Everybody right now watching this is like, no, every game Shane picks is going to be delayed.
I mean, I do think it'll be delayed, but I don't think it's going to be delayed out of this year.
Yeah, it may make it in Q4 or something like that. At least I hope to God that's the worst case scenario.
I think it might slip to August.
Okay, well, let's talk about Doom Eternal. Your pick.
The 2016 Doom is phenomenal. It's just pure fun. People I know who don't even like shooters love that game. Also a huge number of women I know love that game.
Really?
That's one of their favorite. Even though they don't like shooters, they love Doom. They love
wow,
Doom.
I'm really surprised to hear that.
It was one of the first things I
While
noticed.
I'm watching heads get ripped off and skulls get stomped.
Girls like killing shit just the same as we do.
Yeah, I guess they do.
And this just looks like more and
new trailer out today, by the way,
faster and crazier, and I can't see this thing not reviewing real well.
Yeah. The last one had finished with an 8.8, I think.
Up there, yeah. And I feel like this will do just as well or maybe better.
Yeah.
Especially now that it doesn't have mediocre multiplayer holding it back.
Yep.
So I feel like I thought this was a great pick for you last year until they delayed it. I really didn't see that coming.
I still can't understand it, but whatever.
You got to do what you got to do.
Yeah.
But works out for me.
Yep.
Because now I got it.
Now you got it. That's exactly right. Yeah, I agree, and I do think too that the multiplayer in the last game, it wasn't bad. It was just very forgettable.
Yeah.
And this game, they did all the multiplayer in-house. In the first game, they farmed it out to some other studio. This time they did it all in-house. The hopes are that
I think that's going to make a big difference.
It should, yeah. Which ultimately should help boost its score for both value and content. So, a good pick there. Good and safe pick. Worst case scenario, that game gets an 8.5.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what you want right there in that 3-hole. All right, my next pick. I actually cribbed one from you for this one.
Yeah, but I think this has been on 2 of my previous
Has
teams.
it?
I think at least.
Did you draft it 2 years?
Yeah, I think so.
Interesting. My 4th pick is Dreams.
Mm-hmm.
I surprised myself with this pick because last year at the draft, it wasn't even on my radar. Mm-hmm. And then you picked it, and I was like, oh, that's a genius pick because everything Media Molecule does gets an insanely high review score. They ended up going into beta last year, but never did release it. Now it's coming out here in the early part of 2020. I did read a couple people reviewed the beta and gave it perfect scores. Mm-hmm. That doesn't mean that much, but the fact that a couple people at least had played the game extensively and thought it was excellent helped me. And I think that's honestly why it ended up at 4 instead of 8. Another part of that was that I didn't think it would make it past you for another 2 picks. That was really my big concern, was I knew that you had drafted it the year before, and I realized what I did with AC Switch. I was like, oh, I don't want to lose this. I've invested a lot in this game. And then I extrapolated that out onto you with Dreams. And I was like, oh, maybe Matt's going to look at it the same way, and he's going to be like, oh, I had Dreams last year. I'm not going to lose out on it this year. So I picked it a little bit earlier than I wanted to because, again, a big part of fantasy sports, it's not just picking the best game or player that's there. It's being smart about knowing your opponent and what you think they may or may not pick so that you can get games higher that you may not have been able to get otherwise.
I had this more around 6 or 7.
Okay.
Because I do think it'll review well. I'm just not sure.
It could go.
A game like this is so variable in terms of how you experience it and how you react to it. So it just... The more and more as time went on, especially in the post-beta after playing the early access stuff, it ended up feeling... I mean, a lot of the stuff in it is brilliant, but it feels risky somehow to me in terms of cause not even just risky in the sense of oh, people won't like it, but it's the question of will the people assigned to review this quote unquote get it?
Yeah.
You just never know. So
Well, the good news is they did have that big beta, and it's been going on for quite a while. So when it launches, there's going to be a ton of content sitting there waiting for people to experience.
I think that's the key.
And some of it has been amazing. Mm-hmm. That's the other thing. Every time I have checked out Dreams, I've been blown away by what people are creating with it.
Yeah, people are making crazy stuff in this thing, and it's exactly what they said it was going to be.
Yeah.
Basically. So
it took a long time to get here, but
they did it.
Finally here. They finally completed it, and it's going to be out soon. I feel pretty good about that pick at number 4. All right, what's your pick for 4?
So my pick for 4 is finally, you can relax, chat, Final Fantasy VII Remake. This is kind of self-explanatory. It is it is Final Fantasy VII, which I think is an intensely mediocre game, but
it's not the same game.
It's not the same game, and an entire generation of people who were children when it came out think it's good. So and they're going to right in that nostalgia zone. They're going to want to play this thing, or want to play this thing with production value and all the music's done up. I mean, certainly, I don't think they could do anything better with it right now.
Well, you were also talking earlier about bumps.
And there's
how you consider bumps throughout your draft. I have a feeling this might be one of the games.
I think this might be the most overrated game of the year already. In terms of not in terms of how people like it, in terms of actual rating numbers, like review scores. I think it might be the most bumped of the year. It's not higher on my list because it's not the same. Because they are changing it and putting that kind of action-oriented combat in it. That's why I stayed away. It's a little shaky because there's a chance that someone who loved the original game is going to play this and feel like it's not what they wanted.
Believe me,
so
that's
kind of my only caveat on this is
that's why it's the 8th game picked, because I looked at this. It's just like when we ask people, what do you think I'm going to pick next? The answer was Final Fantasy VII. I looked at it with every pick, and like you just said, I settled in on the fact that people may reject this game if they start playing it and they're like, this isn't Final Fantasy VII to me. There could be huge fan backlash. I mean, I don't know.
The review backlash, it depends when it ends.
Yeah.
Like how much
That's
game
a big
do you
part
actually
of it
get.
too. Yeah.
But I think it's also it's got too much cultural cachet to not be picked by now.
Yeah.
This was the time. Since Ghost of Tsushima was gone, Final Fantasy VII gets 4th. Yeah, basically.
Like I said, I thought about it with every pick leading up to this one, and I just couldn't pull the trigger on it.
Yeah, this was probably the pick that I put where it was the most because I didn't want you to get it.
Okay.
I figured you would do that next.
It probably would have been. Yeah. Because I had passed on it already 3 times and had found rationalizations.
I was stunned when you picked Dreams.
Really?
I thought you were going to pick Final Fantasy VII.
Oh,
right?
okay.
I thought that was the next pick. I'm like, I guess I do get that.
I think Dreams is going to score higher than Final Fantasy
I think there's
VII.
a good chance.
Yeah. I think it is. Next up, my 5th pick. And this is another one where I was like, oh no, I'm not letting that thing get away.
Coming back for more.
Yep, and that is Ori and the Will of the Wisps. It does have a release date.
It does.
It is coming out this year.
It's
supposed
finally
to.
Happening.
This is another game that I picked last year that got delayed out of the year and cost me the season. I was not going to let Matt get the 8.8 or 9 out of this game that I had opined for last year. It may not score that high. But when you get to your 5th pick, if it's an 8.5 or higher, you're usually pretty happy with that. In fact, last year I would have killed for that at this spot. So I'm pretty excited about this game. The first one scored like a 9.1 or something like that on Metacritic. So even if this one isn't as good and it takes a slight step back, I'll still be okay with it in the 5-hole. They haven't shown a lot of this game. I'll be honest, I'm still a little nervous about it.
I think it'll make it.
Yeah.
I remember I was pretty sure it wasn't going to make it last year.
Yeah, you were.
And you were like, well, it's been 4 years. I'm like,
yeah.
I don't know.
I think you had some insider information on that.
That was later. I ran into someone who was working on it later on, and they kind of confirmed. I'm like, so, and they were sort of like, I wouldn't expect to play this. I'm like, yeah, I'm glad.
Much to my chagrin. So. If you guys haven't played the first Ori, you can probably get it for $5. Go play it. It's an amazing game. So that's the other part of it too.
Especially now they patched the thing where you couldn't get 100% completion.
Right.
In the definitive edition.
It's an amazing game, really emotional game as well. I'm not counting on anything less than this, and obviously they've given them plenty of time to make a sequel that's even better. This is just a side-scrolling indie-ish game, and they've had like 5 years to make it, so I have high hopes for this game. I'm excited for it. I think it's going to score well, so I'm pretty pleased with getting it at number 5.
Okay, so my number 5 is now we're starting to get into the
this is where it gets dicey,
more experimental categories.
Yep.
Dying Light 2.
Yeah.
This is very much leaning on my faith in Chris Avallone to craft something that is unlike anything else in the kind of the subgenre, the open world zombie game. I think the demo at E3 supports that if they can keep that going on a macro scale, and that wasn't just like a vertical slice that doesn't turn out to be very representative of the whole game. I'm also kind of leaning on the idea that the fact that like the first game was a surprise addiction for me. Like I played
for
the
a
first
lot
game
of people
for like 100 hours,
yeah.
and I didn't even like it that much early on, and eventually I just kept playing. I was like, I can't stop playing this, and I don't know why.
It took me a while to warm up to that game too.
Yeah. Once you get the grappling hook, it was like,
that's when it changes.
Oh, that's what this is. Okay. So I think this one's going to be good. I think it'll review well as long as they can kind of come through on what they said they were going to do. And considering how well they did the first time, if they just do that but better and more and then add a story that's worth a damn, like how in the world can you go wrong?
My concern is it doesn't come out this year.
That's true. That's
all we've seen
possible
so far is like a 15-minute gameplay and one trailer.
Yeah.
But so there's not a lot out there.
I think there's a good shot, though.
Well, I'll say this. I mean, I saw a demo at E3 that blew my freaking mind. So
and one of the and I think also one of the reasons we may not have seen a whole bunch is I think this might be next gen.
Oh.
They might have slipped it to next gen focus.
Interesting. Is that good or bad for you?
I think it's good because it feels like it'd be a pretty good early launch window game.
Yeah. I'm just saying as far as like it coming out this year and not being pushed. Do you think that's a good thing for that?
Yeah, I think it'll be there.
Okay.
I mean, I hedge my bets on a couple other things. If it falls out, it's not the end of the world.
Look, here's where the draft starts to get dicey. Like, for me, after my 5th pick, that's one where I started taking a lot longer to make picks. And also, that's where there weren't a lot of givens as far as stuff that's coming out. Like, all the big games, quote-unquote, from here on out, none of them are, like, set in stone that they're absolutely going to come out this year. So I ended up taking some risks, but also almost overcompensating and playing extremely safe. I saw a comment in chat. They're like, oh, all these picks are safe so far. Yeah, because I've been burned like the last 3 years in a row. So I have played it safe, but I think that's also a function of something that you said earlier, which is we don't know a lot about the end of the year because there are these new platforms coming and they haven't really divulged a lot about what games are coming. So we're kind of really just picking games from half a year, which is kind of weird. But it is what it is. It's 2020. Okay, so my next pick is Halo Infinite. I almost picked Halo Infinite in the last round instead of Ori and the Will of the Wisp, to be honest with you. And I did a lot of research in between the two games to try to figure out which one to pick first. I just ended up feeling more comfortable that Ori would get an 8.5 or higher.
If you hadn't picked Ori, I would have probably picked that next.
Okay. And the other thing,
that
too...
was probably a wise move.
Well, the other thing, too, is that I knew you weren't going to take Halo Infinite.
No.
And honestly, like, that was another thing, too. I was quarreling in my mind if I should just leave Halo Infinite for the 10th pick. Because I didn't know how long you were going to let it go.
I would never have picked it.
You wouldn't have picked it at all?
I don't trust this game at all.
I was trying to figure that out. Like, I was like, okay, like, where's the line for Matt on this game? I know
not that I think it's going to be bad, but I don't think it's going to I don't know if it's going to review well.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Well, I knew that you weren't excited for it. So I was like, I might be able to get away with getting this in the 10th spot. But then I started saying, okay, if I don't take Halo Infinite, what's left? And I started looking at the games that were left, and I was
especially in terms of games we know will be out this year, no doubt.
That was that was exactly what I was getting to. That was the clincher. I was like, Halo Infinite is coming out. There's no way they can release Series X without Halo Infinite. I'm like...
Cut to September.
I know.
Halo Infinite launching January 13th, 2021.
I'm just telling you how I felt at the time. Yeah. That's what was going through my mind. I'm like, they can't release Series X without Halo Infinite. So once I kind of came across that, I was like, all right, that's it. And it set my pick in stone. So Halo Infinite at number 6. It is a risky pick, but I do feel like it's going to get at least a 7.5.
Yeah, it's better than a 0.
And it's definitely coming out. So, again, I definitely erred on the side of caution this time. All right, what's your 6th pick, Matt?
6th pick is Resident Evil 3 Remake.
Okay.
Another definitely coming out game.
Yep. And just like
I'm a little shaky on this one, just in the sense that Resident Evil 3 is not as good as Resident Evil 2.
That's why you got it at the 6th pick, though.
Right.
Yeah. I mean, Resident Evil 2, I took that at second pick? Was that my first?
That was your first pick.
Yeah.
And after Anthem.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep.
That turned out to be the best pick of the whole year.
It did, yeah.
And but I also wonder, like, it might get a bump from, like, if the multiplayer is any good, because I don't think that multiplayer would fly solo. But like, as
I'm
part
all
of the
sorts of
package.
scared about this game. In the context of the draft, I was scared of this game because one, I know RE3 short, and I was impressed with what they did with RE2, but there's only so much you can do.
I'm just hoping that, like, they can make the same way they improved the Mr. X stuff in 2, that they can make the Nemesis stuff really cool and dynamic and sort of what you always imagined it should be from the original game. If they can make that happen, I think it's going to score real well.
I think they will. I think they will, and I think it will score well. The other X factor to me is the multiplayer. I do not expect it to be amazing. No. So the X factor for me was, how much are critics going to take off the score because they don't like the multiplayer?
Right. Or will they consider the multiplayer just sort of a bonus?
Right.
And, like, it doesn't hurt the score. It's nice to have it, but that's not why you're buying it.
Right.
Kind of thing. So it just depends which way they break on that.
Like I said when we started this, what's most likely to happen? That's what I was looking at with every pick here. And I could not find what was most likely to happen with Resident Evil 3. I just couldn't. I could not come to a consensus in my mind. And I probably would have taken it next because at this point, we're in the 6th round. So, But I was thinking about RE3 several picks ago, and every time I was just like, I can't do it. I can't pull the trigger on it because there's too many.
It's too much a die roll.
Yeah, and but at 6, that's fine.
Yeah.
Like, you're willing to take some risks there. So, good pick there. Time for my 7th pick.
This is probably the pick that I wish I got.
Yeah, I was surprised you didn't.
But I also, like, it's just this mid section where, like, I think this might be better than that. I don't know, like, who knows?
It's hard. It gets really hard right here.
Well, it's also because this is really hard. Yeah. I don't know how the reviewer's going to react to that.
That's a good point. My pick is Neo 2. People may forget the first Neo. Its Metacritic average is 9.1.
Yeah, scored extremely well.
So, like this didn't even make it into, like, right now we're working on our top 20 most anticipated games of 2020. It should be up here in the next couple days. A lot of work. But it wasn't even in that list. And so, like, a lot of, like, when I would do quick reference for this draft, I would go and look at the list of 20. Because obviously, you're like, okay, these are the games that we think people are most excited about. Doesn't mean they're going to score the best, but they're most excited about. And this wasn't even on the list. So once we started getting to, like, these rounds where the games were starting to dwindle on that list of 20, I started looking at my other ones, and I was like, PlayStation 4 exclusives always do well. So let me go look at the PlayStation 4 exclusive. Oh, there's Neo 2. I have no interest in playing this game whatsoever. I played the beta, and it was the hardest game I've ever played in my life. I think literally the most difficult game I've ever played. You're right. There could be backlash over that, but the first game was hard as nails too. And it didn't hurt it one bit. I think at this point we figured out that at every outlet there's a journalist that they put on these games. They like Sekiro, they like Dark Souls, they like Bloodborne. They put them on this. And they don't care that the difficulty is insane. They like it.
It's what they want.
That's what they want. So, look, to get a sequel to a game that scored over a 9 in the 7th round, I'll take it all day, every day. Absolutely. All right, your 7th pick, Matt.
My 7th pick is Microsoft Flight Simulator.
A very, very smart pick.
I mean, a little. I think you're riding on the visuals on this one.
Oh yeah.
And kind of like, I'm hoping. I'm leaning very hard on the idea that the reviewers will review this for what it is.
Oh, for sure.
So,
they're not going to be like there aren't any RPG elements or anything.
Or like
there's
no dog fighting. It's boring.
I mean, that's what it is. It's a flight
simulator.
Yeah. Oh, I think that's a great pick, man. You might have been able to get it a pick or two later. It was so when I do these drafts, typically I have a list of stuff that I'm kind of targeting, and then as the draft goes on, at the bottom of those lists, I'll start at that list. I'll start adding games like that I come across, and I'm like, oh, that's a good pick. And this was the first game that I added to the end of my list as, oh, if Matt isn't on this, I'm going to jump on it. So you might have been able to get it a pick or two later, but when you're in the 7th round, does it really matter?
No,
it doesn't. So I think that's a good pick there. And it's definitely coming out.
Yes, it is coming.
Yep, which again is really, really important in this. All right, my next pick. And this is also a game I really have no interest in playing whatsoever.
Yeah.
But I have a feeling it's going to score really high.
Right. This wasn't even on my radar.
Yep, and
all.
that is Spelunky 2. The first Spelunky, a beloved game. I would argue one of the first real indie breakout smash hits. I do not enjoy Spelunky at all. I respect that a lot of people do. I know Brent, the guy who built SIFTD, is a big Spelunky fan. So is his wife. But all I really care about is what's the game going to score. And the first Spelunky came in a little bit below a 9, I think. And I don't expect this to score as high because it's kind of, for indie games, it seems like once the cat's out of the bag, rarely does the sequel score higher. Mm-hmm. It just seems that way with indie games. Console games, like big budget console games, no. Like the second game almost always sells better and reviews better. But with indie stuff, it doesn't really work that way. I think a lot of times it's because indie games most of the time are built on a concept. Mm-hmm. Like a unique concept that a big budget game isn't going to even try because it's too risky. Well, they can do it in indie games. But then the problem becomes, okay, you have the gimmick now for the game. What do you do with the sequel? You can't get rid of the gimmick because it's what you build it on. So you have to evolve it in some meaningful way, and that's really hard. And
I think there's definitely an element of some of these indie games become review darlings specifically because of the surprise factor.
Yeah.
Like, oh, look at this thing. Look what they did.
Yep.
And then when you do a sequel, you do it maybe bigger and better, and the execution's better, which to me is more important. But
it doesn't have that same impact.
It doesn't have the same surprise factor. It doesn't have the same oh, wow, look at this. It's more like, oh, yeah, this.
Oh, there's more of that now.
More of this.
Yeah. And this sequel has also been a long time coming, man.
Yeah.
It's like 5 years since the first Spelunky came out.
But I can't see this getting less than 8s.
I can't either. And so at 8, I'll take it, man. I'll totally take that there. All right, what's your 8th pick?
My 8th pick is, because every year I have to have at least one weird PC exclusive, Crusader Kings 3.
Yeah.
So Crusader Kings 2 is one of the greatest grand strategy games ever made.
Yeah, it's legendary.
Ridiculous amount of content, ridiculous amount of detail. You're not just choosing where the armies go and what the diplomacy is. You're choosing your dynasty and whether your son marries this princess or whether then they have certain offspring, and those offspring are the people you have to work with as time goes on, and they become the new kings, and sometimes you can end up with idiots as your you're dealing with kind of the human factor in a way that almost none of these games ever cover. And then there's been tons of DLC, and they've expanded out from just Europe. You can go almost all over the Eastern Hemisphere at this point if you get all the DLC, which is a lot of money.
Yeah.
But Crusader Kings 3 has been highly anticipated. It's got a pedigree that is pretty much second to none in the genre, and this one I have confidence in scoring well, not just because of that, but also because it's a PC exclusive in a very specific PC-centric genre, which means the people who review it are chosen for that.
Oh, yeah.
So
absolutely.
The people who review this game are going to...
Yeah, they're not putting some green associate editor on this game.
They're going to know what this is. They're going to know whether it's good. They're going to know what... So I think it's sort of my little weird choice. I always draft
I don't think it's that weird.
I always draft one offbeat kind of this thing Shane would never even think about this.
I never would have drafted this. But the reason I never would have drafted it is because there is very little information about this game. There is one trailer, and I know it's scheduled for 2020, but I could not find a hard release date for it. It seems to be being created by a small-ish studio, which are generally more susceptible to delays. It just seemed too risky for me, and you'll start seeing my last few picks. I really start playing it safe because I wanted to get a little risky with my alternates. And this, at this point in the draft,
we'll talk about that because that's some questions.
We will. Okay, so Crusader Kings. I mean, if you're a fan of Civ, you see how Civ scores every time, and the last Crusader Kings was pretty much the same quality.
I gave Crusader Kings 2 and a bunch of the DLC to one of my friends who's a big he's a history major. He's big, he loves all this stuff, and I kind of showed him this is how this works, and he goes, "Oh no."
He's like, my life's over.
Yeah, he's like, oh no, they made it. They made the game in my head. I'm screwed. So
that's great.
It's a really good. If you haven't played Crusader Kings 2 and you like kind of historical weird stuff and sort of a mild eugenics angle, pick it up on a Steam sale when it's cheap with some DLC. It's really good.
Yep. I think that's a good pick there, even though I would have never made the pick. You're right. It wasn't even on my radar. It was not on my little list at the end of my list as some of the other games have been. My next pick.
Your next pick is the thing I have the biggest problem with on your entire team.
Okay, let me provide some context for my
I was
next
surprised
pick.
by this.
Yeah. So my next pick, I was not a part of the news cycle this morning. I just had so much pre-production to do for this show that I was not looking at the news or anything. So when I made this pick, I did not know that a huge development had literally just happened like 5 minutes earlier. I had no clue at all. So when I texted my pick to you, and you were like, kind of risky, I was like, what are you talking about?
It's a bold move considering this morning.
Yeah, and then I went and looked at it. I was like my eyes popped out of my head. I was like, what the hell? So my pick is Marvel's Avengers. And literally 5 minutes before I made the pick,
real close.
It was delayed. And I just had not looked at the news in the morning because I had too much stuff to do for this episode. And so I went and looked. The good news is it's September 4th. There's still kind of a whole quarter of wiggle room there.
Yeah.
But this makes me very, very nervous now.
I have a mild suspicion it could slip to 2021.
Really?
My other-ish thing is, like, I think this game's in trouble. Like, I think they're in Anthem territory with this. I don't think they quite know what it needs to be. They don't quite know. I don't think.
It's been delayed twice. That's a huge red flag.
I don't think it's going to be quite polished enough to kind of pass for what it needs to be. And I don't like to say that because I really want to play it. I have a lot of tolerance for jank and nonsense when it comes to licenses that I enjoy. Avengers would definitely be. The fact that there have been no Avengers games at all, pretty much, except for Ultimate Alliance 3, is bizarre.
It's insane.
It's so weird.
It's just sitting there waiting to make money.
It's just I am
It's
so
so
amazed
dumb.
at how well Disney has handled like all these elements of these major massive movie franchises like Star Wars and Marvel Cinematic Universe, except in the game space.
Yeah.
Like it's taken them forever to get their act together on
They
these
need
things.
to hire somebody.
They do.
Yeah, for sure.
So I'm just worried about this game, even if it does make it in September. I'm just worried that it's going to be like this weird lackluster. Bleh.
I mean, it might be better if it actually does get delayed, and I can use one of my alternates.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, that would kind of be my hope at this point for if with that. But I don't know.
Look, I'm not as down on it as you are. Like, based upon what I've seen of the game being played with my own two eyes, it looks like it's a 7.5 to 8.
It looks fine, but I have a feeling that like because of the pedigree of it and the quality of the movies and sort of like what we've been, the fact that we've been waiting a long time for this, I could see, even though it does look more like a 7.5 to me, I could see it getting 6s, 6.5s.
I'll say this too.
It's like a punitive
Crystal
measure
Dynamics has never made a game that bad.
That's true.
Ever. So part of it is the developer pedigree. The other part of it is that I know somebody really well that's working on the game. And granted, he's incentivized to tell me that the game is like the bee's knees, but I've known the guy for like 15 years, and like he can level with me. At least to the point where, like, if he was concerned about the project, he'd like cock an eyebrow or something. And I got nothing like that from him. In fact, he was very disappointed, and he felt like the game wasn't being represented as well as it should be in the press. Not by the press, but just the way it was being received and the way that they had kind of crafted the marketing plan for the game. He felt like it was kind of getting short-shrifted. So it's my 9th pick. If it gets a 7.5, that's a winner for me at 9. And we have 2 alternates, so I started to get a little cheeky here at the end, but I don't feel bad about that pick right now.
Yeah.
We'll see as like the months start to wear on and we start hearing more rumblings about its development. But right now I'm okay with it. So what's your 9th pick?
My 9th pick is Psychonauts 2.
Double Fine.
Another game that I think this will be this year, but it's Double Fine, so you never quite tell.
It's supposed to be this
It's
year.
supposed to be this year.
And they're owned by a company now.
Yes,
Which may
that's
actually
true.
motivate them to
speed
get
that
their
up a bit.
stuff out. Yeah.
I saw this at E3, and I am a backer of it as well on Fig. And I really liked what I saw. It was very tight and polished and felt like Psychonauts. And if they do get it out this year, I think this is a pretty guaranteed 8 or 9.
Yep. My question is the new generation of critics. Do they like it?
I think it's hard to not like it.
It really is.
It's such
But
a
it's a
charming
platformer.
Game. Yeah.
And it seems like the new generation, that is not a genre that's really resonating with them.
Well, we'll have to see, because I think the setting and the humor and the verve of it might carry it.
It will. It's it's going to be extraordinarily clever and very smartly designed. The level design is going to be sublime. But will they give it a chance, because you're jumping and hopping and all that for the vast majority of the game? We'll see, I guess. But look, if we could go back in time to when the first Psychonauts came out, and then maybe 2 years past that when this probably should have come out, this game would have been like a top 2 pick.
Yeah.
But the times have changed, and it's been frustrating for me to watch kind of the general gaming public reject 3D platformers. That's kind of what's happened over the last few years. Unless you're a 3D Mario game, you have trouble in that space. So it'll be interesting to see how it's received. Like, I have a feeling both of us are going to love it, but will all those fan sites that are run by 18 to 24-year-old kids like it as much as we do? I don't know. But it's your 9th pick.
Yeah, I think it's weird enough to cross the boundary.
Yeah, it absolutely could. All right, here we go. The last pick for our 10-game teams. Now, keep in mind we have 2 alternates after this, so in case one of these games gets delayed out, we can slide in one of our alternates for that game. So we have 2 more picks after this, but this is the end of our team. And I have a feeling that my team, this is going to be the team. Unless Avengers slips out, that's probably my biggest X factor. But I have a feeling that,
other than that, I don't see anything on your team that could.
I think I may have finally drafted a team where I get all 10 games. That would be very nice. My last pick, and I got a little personal with this one. It may end up being a mistake, but it was a game that's really resonated with me, and I'm really excited for. You guys may not be. That's Gears Tactics. XCOM with a budget the size of a Brumac.
Yeah.
That's really what it is. It's being created by Splash Damage, which makes me a little nervous because they've typically been first-person shooter developers. They made Enemy Territory Quake Wars, and they made a couple other free-to-play shooters along the way since then. This is not particularly in their wheelhouse, but when you have Microsoft looking over your shoulder and the support of all those internal teams, and I'm guessing they probably gave them a lot of tech support with engines and stuff like that. And look at it.
Yeah, I'll be shocked if this scores below an 8.
Yeah, I wouldn't go that far. I would say I'd be shocked if it gets below a 7. Because the other part of it, too, is the cinematic stuff is the X factor, really. The actual gameplay of turn-based strategy games, it's not that hard to nail it. There's no feel. It's turn-based. So as long as it looks okay and all the numbers work out and it's balanced, you're going to be good. And then you're left with the skin that goes on top of it. And wow, this is easily the best-looking turn-based strategy game I've ever seen by at least a couple magnitudes. So I don't think it's that hard to make the base part of a turn-based strategy game good. The part that is hard to develop, I can see already with my own 2 eyes, it looks amazing. So I'm hoping for a 7, 7.5 out of this, but if it gets that 8 you're talking about, I'm happy with that too. So there you go. That's my team. That's my squad, my 10-game team. Matt, what's your capper?
My last pick is Kerbal Space Program 2.
Yeah. That might be the best pick of the draft, Matt.
Yeah.
The first one got a 9.1.
Yeah. As long as it comes out, I think it's going to be up there.
This is another game that I was doing research on throughout the entire draft, and everything is pointing to that game coming out this year because it was originally planned for last year. Even though we didn't know about it and they didn't announce it, internally it was supposed to come out last year. And then they knew they weren't going to make it, so they put out the trailer that we're seeing now that we all love, one of the best trailers of 2019. Once they realize, okay, now we've got it to a place where we can commit to it coming out next year. I think you're fine. I think it's absolutely going to come out this year, and I think it's absolutely going to score high. And I think if you looked at an algorithm that looked at the best value pick, meaning the score versus where you drafted it, I think that game's going to be the best pick of the draft. Yeah, I think that's going to be it. I think it's great. I think that's a great way to finish your draft. All right. What?
Just him.
The trailer.
The trailer's good.
Its trailer's amazing. It's so great. All right, now it's time for our 2 alternates. These 2 games may not matter. They could matter big time, and for me, they've mattered every year. The first year we didn't even have alternates. We just got screwed.
Right.
But every year that we've had alternates, I've had to use at least one. So these end up becoming pretty valuable. And I got the first pick of the alternates because Matt picked his 10 last. And my first pick for alternates is The Legend of Zelda Breath of the Wild 2. And I am guessing that there are more than a few people who sat and watched this draft and the whole time were like, Zelda, Zelda, where's Zelda? Why aren't you going to pick Zelda? But I think now that you've watched this, you've figured out why Zelda wasn't picked as a proper game.
Yeah, but here's my question. Like, if I actually forgot about Breath of the Wild 2.
Oh, really?
Even though I do think it has a shot this year.
Yeah.
But if I had remembered it, I would have picked it like 8th, 9th, or 10th.
Oh, really?
Because I think this is a pretty low percentage chance it's coming out. It's a wild shot. This is like when I picked Elder Scrolls 6 that one year.
Right,
remember?
right.
Like I would always.
You'd rather put Zelda in your lineup and then have an alternate swap in.
Right, because this is useless.
Because if it
as an
does
alternate.
come out, yeah, you're right. Well, it's not useless,
but because it probably doesn't exist yet. So if your alternates are like. Maybe like a 15% chance of coming out. That doesn't. Really
but that's only one of my alternates. So with my second pick, which we haven't revealed yet, I made sure that my second pick was something that was scheduled to come out in the first 3 months of the year.
I'm just saying, like, it's such a long shot, but if it is correct, it's going to be a huge scorer.
Yeah.
I would want it on my actual team.
No, you're probably right. I probably should have done that.
So when it drops out, I mean, not that I want to give you like strategy advice for next time, but like I would put that on my main team, so if it does come out, I get the benefit, and if it doesn't come out, I have a solid alternate to kind of.
I think the flip side of that is then you have to be way more conservative with your alternates.
Yeah.
But the risk is probably worth it.
And I was pretty conservative with my alternates.
You were, yeah.
So my first alternate is Watch Dogs Legion.
Another game that I looked at like the whole draft.
I am very confident this is coming this year.
You are?
Maybe late this year, but. I even have a slight sneaking suspicion Assassin's Creed might slip and this might replace it.
Really?
I'm not sure what Ubisoft's end of the year looks like at this point. I think there's a little bit of panic.
I didn't want to take anything Ubisoft in this draft.
So, it's understandable. But I think Watch Dogs is out this year. I don't know how well it will score.
The last two have scored very well.
Did well, but this is a reinvention, and there's a lot of new ideas in it, and who knows how well those are going to be implemented, especially at launch. I mean, that's why it keeps getting delayed, is because Breakpoint had the problem of not implementing a lot of its ideas properly at launch. So hopefully when they do put it out, it's because it's ready to go. But I was really just looking for a high-end sort of AAA thing that I think would score solid, and I was pretty sure it was making it this year.
Yeah, I mean, that's a great pick, but obviously one of your games is going to have to slip out for it to be viable.
And I don't think I'm pretty confident about most of those games on my list, except maybe Dying Light 2.
Yeah.
So I didn't feel like I needed it to be like a master stroke, but just to sort of fill the gap and make sure it's not a 0.
Yep. Yeah, and so with my second alternate, I went crazy conservative because I don't think Breath of the Wild 2 is coming out this year. I also don't think I'm going to need an alternate, but in case I do need one, I wanted to make sure that my second pick was something that's guaranteed to come out this year, and that is Wasteland 3. Mm-hmm. It's currently scheduled for release in March. It's been in development for like an eon. There's really no chance that this game does not come out. Obviously, the Wasteland cachet is extremely high. It has been a long time since the last Wasteland, and there is kind of a new team working on Wasteland 3, and we haven't seen a ton of media for it yet. But the pedigree is there. What they have shown of the game looks impressive so far. It is definitely coming out this year. Mm-hmm. There's a lot of excitement for it among PC gamers.
And Xbox, it's on Game Pass.
And you're right, and it's coming to Game Pass. So to me, Wasteland 3 was just me covering my ass. Mm-hmm. It was like, okay, in case everything goes wrong, I'll have this game sitting there that'll at least get me like a 6.5 or a 7 or something like that. Yeah. All right, so what's your last alternate, Matt?
Mine is also pretty safe. It is Sports Story.
And I didn't even know what this was at first.
It's the sequel to Golf Story.
Yeah, I didn't know
on the Switch. It's scheduled for summer. And the first golf story was brilliant, and
yes, it was. Yes, it is. Still
reviewed very well. Is one of the best early releases on the Switch that maybe people weren't necessarily aware of for a while. I think this one will, by the same people, I think it's going to be just as good, maybe better. And it felt like a pretty solid pick in the sense of like, I think this is a guarantee 8.
Yeah,
like just like a fun little like Switch game that like following up on what was already a really cool little like unique little thing. And I feel good having this sort of like in the back pocket if it ends up being needed.
The X factor might be and I'm probably reaching here a little bit. The last game, all they had to do was handle one sport. Seriously, though.
Yeah.
This one, and it's a sport that's also pretty easy to handle in video games. This one, different. They're like action sports now, where timing and controls actually matter. That would just be one concern I would have.
Yeah.
But otherwise, that's a great pick for your second alternate. And it's definitely coming this year as well. So there you go. That's the SFL 2020 draft. How do you feel about your team?
Pretty good, although I feel like this might end up being the closest it's ever been.
I think these teams are real close. Yeah. And I'm excited about it. Like, I'm excited to follow this for the rest of the year and watch, like, as you get a game release and you jump ahead in the race, and then I get one release and I jump ahead. I think this might be the best season we've ever had in the SFL, just looking at these teams. But I'm curious, what do you guys think? We do have a trailer of the week this week, and while we're running it, why don't you guys go into the chat and tell us which team you think is better, and just a quick sentence of why. And when we get back from the trailer of the week, we'll read some of the best ones. We want to hear your analysis. Although you guys may want to keep it close to the vest, right? Because some of these guys in chat are going to be doing their own draft. So I get that. If you don't want to tip your hand in the chat, I get it. But you could at least say which team you think is better. So with that, it's time for our trailer of the week. It's been an off-kilter episode of the show because we're doing our draft. So I wanted a trailer that kind of fit the theme. This show's kind of a Frankenstein. We did a couple of normal topics, and then we did a draft. So I wanted a trailer of the week that kind of represented the kind of show that we just did. And yesterday, Universal finally released the second trailer for the theme park that it's working on with Nintendo in Japan. Now, don't get too excited. When I saw this, I thought it was going to show off all the rides and stuff for the first time. No. They handle it a little bit differently. Let's give it a watch. So what do you think, Matt? Obviously, they're not showing the rides yet, but they're
Although I
kind of
think
showing concepts, I
Some
guess.
concepts. It looks like there might be some kind of AR thing at some point. Clearly, you're going to be able to buy hats.
Yeah.
And I mean, a Mario Kart coaster is sort of a
given. Yeah.
I am a little
Rainbow Road. It has to be, right?
I'm a little disappointed that like it's so Mario focused.
Yeah, it doesn't really
liked more.
Yeah, it doesn't encapsulate all of Nintendo.
Yeah.
Like you're saying, where's Metroid?
Yeah, I mean, I didn't expect Metroid really, but like, would I ride like a weird sort of
Yeah.
dark Metroid ride? Absolutely.
Yeah,
That
of
would
course.
be
I mean, I'll ride everything. Like
Right.
if I make it over there to check this out, I'll ride everything. Absolutely. But also, that is sure to throw up a copyright strike on YouTube. So
Yeah, it'll be fun.
people watching this on YouTube, that trailer may have just been completely blacked out for you guys. But for our patrons and subscribers, we should be able to run it. But we'll have to change it before we get out to the wild. All right, let's take a look and see what people think about our teams here. Also, now is your chance to ask us some questions. We'll do a little bit longer of a Q&A because obviously this is a shorter episode. Go at SIFTD Games if you want to ask us a question. Let's see. Where is the point where we asked? Edel Studios. I think Shane might finally win again. Tomb Raiders. I can't call it this year. I think you're both even. Johnny Hurricane says it'd be pretty nuts if Shane lost Avengers and it got replaced by Zelda. It would. What an upgrade. Mike's Q says, I think Matt's team is only slightly better due to his are from developers that have a good launch day reputation. Shane has some patch-heavy hitters, but really close. That's a good point, actually. You're right. Yeah, some of the games I have, those games end up becoming great eventually.
I like a bunch of jerks point.
Where is that?
Down
Matt's
there.
team wins. His list leans more into the power of nostalgia. That's
Bump.
That's a good point.
Nostalgia bumps all around.
That's true. That's a good point, actually. I think that's it. Yeah, I think that's... Nobody predicted who was going to win. FF8 Master C. Matt has more games I will play. So it looks like he's leaning towards you. That's it. Wow. Surprised you guys didn't want to chime in more. Interesting. Okay, let's get to some questions. Freeze Frame Rate, thank you for subscribing via Twitch Prime. That's awesome. Mark Simpson, UK. No Forza in any of your picks. Surprised isn't the word. LOL. Well, Forza Horizon is not coming out this year.
Yeah, but Forza Motorsport 8 probably is.
Yeah, that's actually...
I think
he
that's
does bring up
launch.
a pretty good point.
Yeah, I thought about it. I just didn't want to roll the dice, and I also don't know how Forza's going to score anymore.
I don't either, honestly. It doesn't seem like driving sims just score that high anymore.
I mean, you
really.
could get kind of the default, like, hey, it's really good and it's really pretty, 9 out of 10 kind of thing. Or it could be like, yeah, we played this a lot. I've already got 3 of these on the previous system. Maybe it's time to move along. I especially because we don't know what it is or what it's going to do. Like, I feel like until that E3 presentation, the inevitable E3 presentation of Forza 8, like, you're not going to know whether it's something that's going to catch some attention or just going to be like, oh, this is another thing, and I'd rather play Halo Infinite.
Yeah, I'm just not that excited about Forza Motorsport, I'll be honest. That's why it never even entered my mind. Because
I thought about it, I just decided to...
I didn't even think about it.
Leave it on the side of the road.
Like, I know it's coming out, but it just never even, like,
if it had
entered.
been Horizon, I probably would.
Oh, I would have. I remember I drafted Horizon the last time it came out. I'm all over that. But the more rigid Forza Motorsport, not so much. Let's see. Mike's Q. No, that's not a question.
Hype.
J. Reed Vic 7, with the rise and dominance of games as a service that people will continue to play, how much do launch lineups or overall lineups matter for the mass market who will eventually upgrade to next-gen consoles? Uh-oh, we just hit the hype train level 2. Do you know about this, Matt?
No.
So it's this brand new feature on Twitch where if people give enough bits and cheers, it builds this hype level. And then if you get it all the way to the top, like, the hype train happens. And I believe, like, a train, like, animates across and, like, all this stuff happens. Like, the screen explodes. I don't know. We'll have to find out. Maybe someday we'll get it. We're only at level 2 at 28%. So we need another 72% to find out what the hype train is.
Or hype train level 3, I don't know.
Yeah. Yeah, you're right. Maybe that's just 28% of level 2.
Yeah, it is.
Oh, God. We'll never make it. That's not happening. Anyway, let's get back to the question. How much do launch lineups or overall lineups matter for the mass market who will eventually upgrade to next-gen consoles?
I mean, I think they matter. I don't know how much games as a service really takes away the incentive to get the next best thing, the bigger, better thing.
Yeah.
But I think I think games as a service, if impact more, has been sort of cannibalizing each other. So does it matter whether Destiny 2 plays on your new system? Probably, if you're that into Destiny 2. But how many people are going to make that decision one way or the other? I don't know. That's an X factor that I hadn't really thought about before. I wonder if that will be part of it.
Well, the other thing too is we've never seen games as a service as a launch game. Mm-hmm. I can't remember a single launch game that was a gas.
I don't think so.
Yeah. So
maybe this time.
Yeah, it could be. I mean,
we have presumably
that,
Fortnite will be there day one.
Well,
right?
there's also that slash looter from Ninja Theory that's coming to
Bleeding
Xbox.
Edge.
Yeah. So and that'll obviously play on Series X as well. So that's an example of it. That could be a game as a service. I don't even know if that game's going to be free to play or not. I'm still waiting to find out. Justin Horman, what's the best game to release in the next 3 months of the year for the past 2 Oh, we can't do that.
Yeah.
Here's a tip for you guys. If you're going to ask us a question that you believe we're going to have to look up the answer for, it's not going to work. I mean, maybe we're disappointing him and he expected us to just know this off the top of our heads.
Maybe.
But that would be really hard. What's the best game to release in the first 3 months of the year for the past 2 generations since the 360 era?
I mean, I'm going to say Mass Effect 2.
Yeah.
That came out in January. And that was my number 2 game of the decade. So
past
I'm
2
going
generations.
to say it was Mass Effect 2.
That's probably a safe pick. Yep.
56%.
ETH D. Oh, we're at 56%. Get on the hype train. Choo-choo. That's hilarious. ETH Demon. So we are getting a Smash Direct. Who do you think the fighter will be?
Man, I don't fucking know.
I don't effing care.
Who can predict at this point?
I mean, there's no predicting it because it's all over the map at this point, and there hasn't been any hints the way there have been for prior characters. Really, I have no clue.
Could be anything.
It really could be anything. Try to think of some games that's coming out for Switch that Nintendo's partnered with, and that might help. Maybe like a Fortnite character or something.
Or like the Vanquish guy.
Yeah, I don't know.
I don't know.
Or what about like Dante from Devil May Cry?
Yeah, Dante would be
possible because all the DMCs are coming to Switch right now.
Yeah, that's true.
But otherwise, I think we're just whistling in the dark. We really have no way to know.
Master Chief coming in. Oh, hype train!
Hype train, 100%. Is that it? Hype.
Go Gutex, go.
Is that it?
Well, now we're on level 3.
That's all it is? Oh, okay, so we haven't actually had the hype train happen yet.
No, the train isn't here
We
yet.
just reached level 2 of...
Level
now we're at level 3.
I don't know how many levels of hype train there are.
There it goes. It's inching up. Oh, I see that band across the top shows your progress. Interesting. All right.
A load bar.
We'll see if we can make it there before we finish Q&A. Back on TV, there's someone who said that my team was better. Shane's list is the better one overall, I think. Matt, what do you think? This is from Not Circ. What do you think of the Street Fighter V patch from a modder? Do you know what he's talking about?
I think he means there's a patch that somebody did that basically fixed the netcode.
Oh.
And of course the question is why didn't Capcom just
fix it itself?
I mean, it's a good question. I don't know why that didn't happen. I mean, sometimes also remember programming and that kind of thing is an art as well as it's
absolutely.
Science. Sometimes he might have just seen something that no one else at Capcom could see.
That's true.
You don't know.
Yeah.
I'm glad he did it. Just further proof that the community is really good at filling gaps. I mean, look how fast all the Witcher games had mods to put that "Toss a Coin to Your Witcher" song.
Yep, just like
after
that.
The Netflix show went up.
Yeah.
I think it's good. I think it's cool. I hope Capcom contacts the guy and is like, hey, how'd you do that? Can we have that?
Yeah.
Can we do that?
Yep. J. Reed Vic, thanks for Twitch Prime. FF8, Master C, thank you for Twitch Prime. Veritas, thank you for Twitch Prime. Axel F1986, thank you for Twitch Prime. Vinu Raba, thank you. That got us to the level 2 of the hype train, man. It was all about you. You did it. Thank you. Let's see. How did they make the emoji with, like, the hand on my chin there?
I guess it's a new thing.
I don't know what that is. It's interesting. Mike's Q, this might be a Pactor question, but do you think Gen 9 games will be $69.99 each in the U.S.? Most other territories already have more adjusted pricing.
I don't think they will. I think they'll stay at 60 for the time being.
Yeah, I don't think they're going up either. It's just one of those fixed costs.
Yeah,
that's
what the microtransactions and stuff are for. They make it up with the microtransactions and season passes.
Yeah,
that's all.
Yeah, I think it's going to stay at $59.99. At least I hope so.
Although if anybody does it, it'll be Sony.
No, you're right. Absolutely. SJD Swanland, thank you for Twitch Prime, man. 18 months, you rock.
I could see Sony making the PlayStation 5.
Uh-oh, we're 65% on the level 3 hype train.
67 now.
67%.
I could definitely see Sony making the PlayStation 5 exclusive games $69.99.
I could see that. Yeah.
Because their ray tracing costs $10.
Yeah, they'll make up some lame excuse. Lynn Jeff 99, my daughter who is 7 just got a Switch, and we have Mario Kart. I'm guessing you got the Mario Kart 8 bundle. What would be another must-buy family multiplayer game? FYI, she's asking for Street Fighter. Well, if she's asking for Street Fighter,
get her Street
then
Fighter.
You buy her Street Fighter. That's it. It's done. You should be so happy your daughter wants to play Street Fighter.
She knows what she wants.
Yeah, get it for her. I mean, but obviously Smash Brothers.
Smash Brothers
That's
is
the
fine.
other one. But look, if your daughter wants Street Fighter instead of Smash, get her Street Fighter.
Yeah.
Absolutely. That's an upgrade. She'll be a better player if she learns how to play Street Fighter first. Yeah, I think that's what I would do, but obviously Smash, a great alternative.
What am I supposed to say? Get snipper clips?
Or arms.
Get the poor girl Street Fighter.
Or get him arms. One Super Master Gamer, how many years do you think next gen will last? These are great questions, guys. You guys are knocking it out of the park today. 6 years.
That's 6-7 years, yeah.
Yeah, I think they'll be exactly the length of this one.
Yeah.
Yeah, because nothing's really changed hardware-wise.
No.
That would necessitate it ending sooner or later.
No, we'll see if the generations are even that clearly delineated.
Or it could just go for 30 years. I mean,
yeah, it could just be increment. I mean, Xbox clearly doesn't seem to intend to release a new numbered system anymore.
Right.
They're just going to put out these series upgrades
of whatever. Yeah.
Really, the last, who knows? I guess it depends what Nintendo calls their next system. But really, the only one still putting numbers on their systems is Sony.
Yep.
And will there be a PlayStation 6?
Probably.
But
yeah, it probably will be the last PlayStation.
I mean, they
hardware,
promised us PlayStation 9 in that PS2 ad where you inhale it and
that's right.
hallucinate the latest Uncharted, I guess.
I forgot about that. Dinky Doo 15, is there any way games can get easier or faster to make with next-gen consoles? The cost just keeps going up for development. Yeah, I mean, actually the cost, I would argue it keeps going down.
Hype train!
Hype train! We just hit level 2! Woo-hoo! We got a level 2 hype train emote. What does that mean?
I don't know. You hit thank? I don't know.
Thank?
I'm too old to know what all this Twitch stuff is.
What happened? I think I hit it too late.
You got a new hype train emote.
Hooray, let the channel know you've earned a new hype train emote.
So now everybody has these weird emotes they can use.
Yeah. Can everybody see what I'm seeing, though? That there's the new hype train emote? I don't know if the people who are watching the stream can do that. Now look, all these emotes.
They're being delivered to the supporters.
Oh, so. That is awesome. So the people who actually donated the bits to get to that level are the ones who get the rewards.
Yeah.
That's great. Well, that's a great idea. Let us know if this annoys the living crap out of you, by the way. If you want us to get rid of it, let us know. Because it could become annoying. But it's kind of fun right now, I think. Okay, back to Dinky Doo's question. I think they are getting faster and easier to make all the time. Mm-hmm. Just look at Unreal Engine 4. I mean, the stuff that they're creating in that. I mean, just the fact that you can make a game that helps people make games just shows how much easier game development is becoming.
Yep.
If you can make a game like Dreams, then your tools are in a place where they're pretty good. So I think if you're an indie developer, it's cheaper and easier to build a game than ever before. Because a lot of these middleware programs, these engines, will let you use them for free. And then once you sell the game, then you give some residuals back to the the holder of the license for it. But yeah, I think game development, based upon what you have to do to make a modern video game, is pretty cheap, relatively speaking.
Yeah.
I mean, nobody's building their own engines anymore. Well, a few do, but not many.
Not too much. I mean, even Kojima shopped around for an already built engine.
Yeah, I mean, it's just the way it is anymore. So
and remember, his whole thing used to be building an engine to handle specifically what he wanted to do.
Yeah.
So
I don't think it's the game development environment that's making games take longer to make and more expensive to make. I think it's that the expectations for games now are so high that if you want your game to sell, then you have to spend that amount of money to do it. But actually, getting feature B into your game is quicker and easier than it's ever been. So, but just the scope of games has grown so much that there's just a lot more work to do. But the work's easier. Vinaraba, thanks again for those bits. He's the one who's doing it, man. He's keeping the hype train going. Look at a bunch of jerks. Look at that Mike's Q with the This is it. This is where it all came from.
Shit.
Look at all this. Furax75, thank you. SJ Swanlin, an anonymous cheerer, thank you. This is freaking sweet. Wampler, thank you for Twitch Prime. Awesome.
Hype train is real.
It is. The hype train is real. This is great. Zelectro, GTA 6 in 2020.
Not a chance in hell.
I wouldn't say not a chance, but I would say no. I would say very slim to no chance, but there is a chance. But no. Mitchell is alive. Favorite developer, favorite publisher. What would you like to see them make together?
I mean, probably Insomniac and Sony, and I'd like to see them make Spider-Man 2.
There you go.
I feel like I'm going to get my wish.
Yep. Vinaraba also gifting subs to Mellowack. Thank you, man. You're killing it today. Ryan Anderson, another 100 bits. Look, you guys, I love this. You guys all banded together to make it happen. This is awesome. Thank you, guys. It's really sweet. Yeah, more bits. You guys just kept giving them up. This is so freaking awesome. All right, I think that's it for your questions, though. Yeah, and all the okay, that's it. Thanks, guys. This has been a fun show. Shorter than normal. What time is it?
There was a question from the booth.
Oh.
About somebody wanted them to ask you if who your picks for the teams to be in the Super Bowl are.
Oh, that's hard. Okay, so in the NFC, we have the 49ers and the Packers. The 49ers are playing at home. The 49ers defense looked impenetrable last week against a pretty good offense. The Packers offense has been sporadic this year. They've been able to run the ball. They haven't been able to pass very well all season long. And I think that's going to be the Achilles heel. I think it's going to be a really close game, but I do think the 49ers win. So in the NFC, the 49ers. The AFC is more difficult, I believe. If you guys watched the Chiefs come back from being down 24-0.
That was crazy.
It's insane.
Even I knew that was crazy.
It's insane. Insane.
Like John Drake was saying, I went outside to help Andrea with something for 8 minutes, and I came back, and they scored 21 points.
No. I was out driving around. The kickoff. I was listening to the game on the radio. Kickoff. I walk into the store. I come out. It's 14-0. I was like, what the hell happened? And I just thought it was over. Like I was going to go back and watch the game. I saw that score, and I was like, I guess I'll run a few more errands. So I just drive around, do my thing. I come home. I walk in the door when the Chiefs scored the first touchdown. I was like, okay, they scored. I'll sit down and watch now. And then it's just unreal. So I don't know. That is a really tough game to call because Tennessee's running game can't be stopped. Tennessee's defense is probably a little bit better than the Chiefs' defense, but the Chiefs' offense can score really quick and really fast. Man, it's so hard.
Quick and really fast.
Like, I'll say this. Like, if you're betting, I'm assuming the Titans are the underdog. I would bet on the Titans. So even if it's like a 3 or 4 point spread, I would bet on the Titans because I think it's going to be a really close game. As far as winning, I'm shading just slightly towards the Chiefs. And only because I feel like they can score and strike so fast. That I think and as I proved last week, they can come back from pretty much any deficit. They never say die. Yeah. So I'm going to go with the Chiefs, but I think it's going to be close. So my call for the Super Bowl is San Francisco 49ers versus Kansas City Chiefs. I hope the Niners lose because if they win, they would tie the Steelers and the Patriots with 6 Super Bowls, which is something I care about, which is really petty and sad. And I'll just admit it right here on a live stream. So anyway, those are my picks for the Super Bowl. Who wins the Super Bowl once they get there? I'd probably have to go 49ers. I hate to admit it, but they're the most complete team. They have a good defense and a good offense. The Chiefs' offense is really good, but its defense has been spotty. Sorry, Jared. Jared, our TriCaster TD, is a Chiefs fan. But yeah, I do think that they'll win and make it to the bowl, but I think the Niners will ultimately win the Super Bowl. So there you go. Those are my picks. And we hit Hype 2, or Hype Train
3.
Level 2. We'll take it. That's pretty good for the first time we had the Hype Train on an episode of Game Face. So thanks to everybody who donated bits for that. That was really fun. I really enjoyed it. It was a good time. And thanks for all you guys who followed us for the draft. Again, the SIFTD Fantasy Challenge on the site that anybody can enter launches next Tuesday. If you're on the site, you'll see plenty of communication about it. If not, we'll launch it officially on the show next Tuesday. There will be a real prize for the winner, but we're doing a lot of work on it right now. But if you're on SIFTD.net, you'll get a heads up that this is happening, and a lot of you guys will be able to actually pick your teams way before next Tuesday. At least we think that's the way it's going to work. I think that's it. Yeah, hopefully some games start coming out. I have Dragon Ball Z Kakarot sitting in my inbox right now. But, I mean, that's the biggest game of January.
Not it.
I am already jumping on the grenade. But anyway, we'll be back here Tuesday, same time, same place. Thanks to all you guys who checked us out. Good luck in all your drafts. I know a lot of you guys are doing drafts on SIFTD and other places, in all honesty, which is awesome. It's great to see how it's caught on. But good luck in all your drafts. Hopefully what Matt and I did today provided a little bit of a framework for you guys to work from. Hopefully we picked a couple games where you're like, oh, I hadn't thought about that. That helps in drafts. When you get in the later rounds, especially if you're in drafts where you have like 5 or 6 people, it gets really hard by like the 5th round to like pick games. So hopefully we gave you a little bit of insight, and it'll help you guys, and good luck in your leagues as well. So we'll be back here next Tuesday, 1 p.m. Pacific, 4 p.m. Eastern. Game Face is up and out.